What up, people of the internet? All right, today I want to talk to you about the fundamentals of good growth and how you can accomplish them, and specifically how you should be thinking about integrating AI into that work. And I know that this topic feels like rot at this point, like, oh my gosh, are we going to go over this again? Well, I think I have a little bit of a different take than the way that people are thinking about this, which you might be interested in. And the other thing is that you need to solve growth in some of the ways that I'm talking about for you to be able to properly integrate AI into that workflow. And I think also the way that people are using AI is way wrong. So let's start with the fundamentals of growth. One thing that I think that a lot of the tools that you see that have come out that are building AI integrations is they have a bad theory of go-to-market, which is just that you can take any prospect that has your title and you just need to write a better message to them. And I think this is a bad theory. I think the growth that you see working is complex. It's very complex. If you've seen some of the stuff that Eric Nowoslowski has been doing, or Jesse Ouellette, or my friends at Patable, some of the Lemless guys have been doing some really interesting stuff. When they share what they're doing, it's like a 58-step flow. And they don't do this for the sake of complexity. It's for the sake of automation. And also, for this thing to work, you have to really know your customer. So the best way to think about this is assume that you had unlimited amounts of time for your founder or best account executive to write a single email to a person. And I'm not talking about, hey, Jordan, I wear sweatshirts, you wear sweatshirts, we all wear sweatshirts, don't you need this thing? No. What I'm talking about is like, who is your customer? What are they interested? What idea or thing do you believe that goes against conventional wisdom? And what value could you provide them that would be immensely valuable to them? In my case, that's things like going after people that have just lost their job and sending them a list of open jobs for free that they can apply to with the long game, right? These are my ideal titles that I can send open jobs. They can use my system, and when they get a job again, they'll think of me, right? That's super valuable to someone. I can now, with JordanGPT 2.1, I updated it to 2.1 over the weekend. I can figure out your ICP programmatically. I can figure out your persona. I can write a search inside of my jobs. I can find the jobs that are most relevant to the problems you solve. I can find the titles that you target, and I can write messages to those people. So I can send you a cold email with 3 cold emails written for you. So good growth is it has a complex opinion. It is about something that only you can say that none of your competitors can, and that's usually a highly differentiated opinion. And it's about providing a cold email. It's about sending someone a message that is independently valuable to them. And that's not read my white paper. It's like, what can you send them that they're like, oh my gosh, Jordan, that is amazingly helpful. In my case, it's data. It's access to my tool for free for people that are looking for jobs or like it's actual leads. Like I can send you leads that you should contact with messages that you should send to them, right? Because I've developed that deeply. And so it's those things. That's what good growth is. Now let's talk about AI. The thing that people get wrong about AI is that they're not leveraging it to its creative potential. And so I have this framework called creative constraint with context. And the thing, I think the creative piece is where people get it wrong. They're asking AI to be way too creative, but the best way to use these tools is to run it down a chain of your thinking. And that's like, okay, well, what information do you need to know to have context on the problem? What information do you need to know about the prospect to have context on the prospect? What information do you need to know to write a good message? And what information do you need to know to edit that message to make it less like the emails that GPT-4 thinks are good emails? And that's the process that you need to follow. But as part of that process, you can ask these models to be very, very creative. So you need to figure out what is your creative hook. For Eric, that is going after people in the wedding industry and saying, you didn't create a wedding business so that you could have to AI ideas, message the florist and figure out the wedding venue. So it creates some really, really specific ideas that the person might be doing manually right now. Super creative. For Syncari, it is Syncari. I had this conversation with Evan, and I'm embarrassed that our customer. Why don't I know the correct pronunciation of their name? It is figuring out what systems they are using, figuring out the systems that that Syncari can help with, and then merging those two things to ask about what happens in your role if this thing goes wrong. What metric do you probably care about that this thing impacts, right? Super creative. For Sendoso, it's figuring out the titles that you target, figuring out the gifts that those people might care about, inventing a gift that they might care about and why they might care about it. So Jordan, like it seems like you sell to CTOs. CTOs like complex puzzles. And do you want to send a complex puzzle to a CTO on a call? And perhaps we can send it to customers like blah, 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 who are either customers that we know you have or customers that the large language model invents that you might want. This is how to think about AI. It needs a theory of mind. It needs a good go-to-market theory of mind. It needs a theory of who you are. And then you need to allow it to be super creative. And if you can do that and not constrain, you basically can create the bowling lane here. The AI will knock it out of the park. And we can let it do things that are ultra creative that no SDR, no AE could ever do, and let it sing. But you can't. It's the world's most powerful 12-year-old, and so you can't give that person a key to the castle without defining the walls, protecting them with mattresses, and then say, go build a really interesting thing inside of this protected space. All right, well, that's all. So growth is complex, and it involves a complex theory of who your customers are and why you care about them, and mapping that with data, and then processes and tools like N8N or Clay, kind of some of the two leaders here. And then on the other side, it is how do you leverage the large language model to be really creative in how not only it talks to people, but how it can understand your audience and maybe even do things like forecast problems or invent gifts. It's a little bit, the creativity is a little bit different for each person, each company, but that's how I think about it. Thanks so much for watching. Boy, you have invested a whole 8 minutes here of your time. I'm so grateful for you. If you have a growth challenge, drop it below. You want some ideas about how AI can be creative, happy to help here. And fill out JordanGPT 2.1. Right now, we will actually prospect up to 3 leads for you. You define your ICP and persona. We run a search inside of our tool. It's pretty complex. So thanks. Have a wonderful, 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 wonderful Tuesday.